Time for Comeback Sports with Brandon, the Coach Perry, and Pat, the Shot Caller Flaherty. Here we go.
Happy Wednesday, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Comeback Sports. That's right, it's a 10-topic sports show that we bring you every week about 10 of the biggest sports topics across the country, across the globe. I am one of the hosts, Pat, the Shot Caller Flaherty. As always, I am joined by my co-host, Brandon, the Coach Perry. Brandon, how you doing this week, my friend?
What's up, Pat? How are you? I'm doing good. Want to give a shout out to all of our new subscribers. Thank you for checking in with Comeback Sports. And if you're new, give us a subscribe here tonight. But I also want to give a major shout out to Katie Ledecky bringing home the gold in the women's 1500 freestyle last night. Historic, the first time ever in the women's. And then also Carissa Moore bringing home the gold to Hawaii in surfing, in women's surfing. Another first for the Americans. So Americans flexing some gold over in Tokyo.
Yeah, despite a couple of COVID issues with some American athletes and, of course, some American athletes bowing out. We're going to talk about that later on in the show, but Americans still showing up in the Olympics. And like the coach just mentioned, folks, if you like this show, you're watching it right now on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube page. That's Comeback Sports on YouTube. So subscribe to the channel, Comeback Sports, and then all the cut-ups that our awesome producer Ben Kudo puts together after the show, that'll all filter to your YouTube channel. You don't have to go search for it, it's just right there in your subscription. So make sure you subscribe. You can also follow us on our Twitter handles at the bottom of the screen right there. Both Brandon and I are on Twitter. We try to tweet out. That's a lot of alliteration. All the different segments and all the different topics we're going to be talking about, and of course the weekly live broadcast that we do every Wednesday night. And finally, you can call into our show at that number at the very bottom of the screen. Ask us a question, give us a comment, ask us something that, something you want to talk about, bring it up on the show. We're more than happy to bring callers in. As always, it's a lot of fun hearing from our fans. So as Brandon mentioned, thank you so much to all the subscribers that have been great over the past couple of weeks, especially. The more people that subscribe to the show, the better the show is going to be. So we really appreciate all you loyal fans out there. We're going to kick things off here with topic number one tonight. The first topic is with college football. We haven't really talked a lot about college football lately because there hasn't been a lot of news, but massive news coming out over the past week or so is that both Texas and Oklahoma, two of the most storied college football programs in the Big 12, are jumping ship. They're headed over to the SEC, the powerhouse conference of college football. It's been like that for a long time now. And now two more, storied programs are heading over there, Brennan. What do you think about these two teams heading to the SEC next year?
Well, first off, I've got something really funny to say. I mean, if that phone number, call in, but if you're calling from the Netherlands, it's going to be long distance. So you might want to rethink that call. But hey, I would like you to call in. But I'd really like a call from a college football fan that talk about this, because this is mega news. I mean, this is the biggest news of the week, in my opinion, to be honest. That's why we're covering it first. And I mean, when I saw this, I was like, oh my, the SEC is just getting mega now. And it's like the rich get rich and the poor get poor, because you have the best conference in college football, right? They have all the best teams, really, that are always fighting for the chance. And, I mean, think about it. If you lose in the SEC title game, it often ruins your chance of even going to the title game for the national championship. That's how big this conference is. It's almost like another national championship when you can get an SEC championship going up against the likes of an Alabama or a Florida or all these powerhouses of the SEC. Even Ole Miss turning it around now with Lane Kiffin there at the helm. Man, I love Lane Kiffin. Give Lane Kiffin a follow, too. You'll enjoy that guy. But, I mean, yeah, this is just big news, I think, for college football and for the SEC, but also for the Big 10 and the Big 12. I mean, I think those guys are the ones that are going to lose out, just going to lose more coverage. But it's just one of these things where I've even heard most recently being like, this is kind of gearing it up for there to just be like 3 mega conferences. So instead of having the Power 5 conferences, you might eventually just have 3 mega conferences, obviously led by the SEC, and then it might turn into like the Big 20 or whatever, because they're going to have to combine forces to basically combat against this powerhouse SEC conference that is not only going to be drawing all the eyes of college football fans, but it's also going to be drawing the big money contracts of TV. And rumor has it that that's why these two teams are jumping ship right now, is because in 2024, I believe, there's going to be a new TV contract with billions of dollars up for grabs for these schools just for being part of the conference, and then for having many more televised games, because guess what? You're going to get to see Alabama go up against Texas or OU, and it's going to be a conference game, and it's going to mean something. So you're going to have a lot of people already tuning into these SEC games, but they're going to tune into a lot more with, like you said, these two historic teams now joining the SEC. It's just the real question of what's going to happen with the other 4 power conference schools. Are they going to combine, and what are they going to combine into, and what are they going to rename themselves into? But I think you will see that over the next year or two. Mind you, this isn't supposed to happen until I believe 2024 or 2025 when the new contract happens. But rumor has it again that these two schools are already trying to weasel their way out and are already planning on scheduling some SEC opponents. So they're going to be trying to make their way out a lot sooner than 2024.
Yeah, I think, like you mentioned, the biggest thing is that they're making this move for money. I mean, that's always how it's been. Anytime a team has left one conference to go to another, it's because of money. I mean, that's why, BC and Miami, Syracuse, Pitt, they all left the Big East to go to the ACC because it was a chance at more money for football and basketball television rights. And, to me, I hate this. I hate this because I like when, you have like either a bowl game or a championship title game where it's the SEC versus the Big 12 or the ACC versus the Big 10 or vice versa, or the Pac-10, now the Pac-12 is going up against the SEC. Like it was awesome when USC faced Texas in the national title game, one of the greatest games, college football games ever, because it was like the West Coast versus the South. Or, just that was always cool. And now it's like, it first started with the Big East kind of collapsing, and that was terrible. Supposedly what happened is the Big East commissioner screwed up a television deal with ESPN. And then all these schools were like, all right, if you're not going to take that deal with ESPN, we're jumping ship. That's exactly what happened. You lost all those good schools. And now we're seeing this here with the teams from the Big 12. And I also like the geography of it. I like when, like the ACC, it made total sense that Miami was in the ACC. That made total sense to me. But BC's up in the Northeast, Pitt's up in the Northeast, Rutgers, like all those schools should have been in the Big East Conference. And now it's like, you got teams flying in all these different directions. And I know flying and everything is more common now than it was before, even at least before COVID. And it's a little bit easier now for teams to do, but I just can't stand this. I mean, I totally understand why, we were talking before the show that it's probably going to help recruiting. If you move over to the SEC, it helps with money. If it benefits the student athletes to be on TV more, now that they can make money, off the field on their own, if they're on TV more, then maybe some companies want to sponsor them because they're on camera more. That's great for the student athletes. But as a purist college football fan, I don't like this at all. I love when it's conference versus conference. Which conference is good this year? Next year, will this conference be better? And you're just not going to have it. The SEC is just going to smack everybody around, every season now. With these two teams, too, when you think about Oklahoma, they had how many seasons before the COVID season? They had 3 straight seasons of going 12-2, finishing 12-2 at the end of the year. And now, like if you're in the SEC, you finish 12-2, you might not make the SEC title game. So they're not even going to have a chance at one of those top 4 playoff spots. So it's just, I don't love it. It's just, I love the tradition of college football, and this is breaking up the tradition, and that's one of the things that I don't like about it.
love that you are a purist of college football, man. I really do love hearing that. It is sad though, that because it's like money talks type of situation. And I'll tell you one other network that's going to explode and has already exploded since it came on the network is the SEC network. It's going to have all these games televised, and everybody is going to want to tune in onto that network. So if they're not on ABC, NBC, or CBS, they're going to be on the SEC network. So they're going to be, you might get to see literally every single one of these teams playing every week because they're the powerhouse conference at this point. But quickly, as a Florida State fan, I would love to see Florida State jump on this train now. Jump on this train as quickly as you can and get out of the ACC and jump over to the SEC. I know, Pat, you don't want to hear that, but I want them to join a powerhouse. My brother is a huge Alabama fan. He's probably watching this show right now. I would love to see Florida State playing Alabama year after year. But also quickly, before we go over, I think the biggest conference that has a chance to maybe pick up the pieces from this and benefit is the Pac-12. Like you said, they're on the West Coast. They're looking over there like, man, this East Coast, we want nothing to do with that. Like you said, the travel, it doesn't make no sense for us to be playing conference games over there. So let's pick up the pieces and try to basically form the second biggest conference now in the country. And I think, though, the Pac-12 is going to be the one that has the most to benefit. And like I said, I think it's going to be geared to now, instead of Power 5 conference, we're probably going to have a Power 3 coming very soon. But we'll be watching and we'll be covering it for sure. Let's move on to topic number 2 tonight. And the coaches got to get the vaccine. The coaches got to get the shot. We're talking about mandatory vaccines in the NFL for coaches and all Tier 1 personnel in the NFL. So anybody that comes in close contact with the team or with player personnel or with coaches has to be vaccinated in the NFL to basically keep your job or stay on the team or stay in the organization. What do you got on this, Pat?
Yeah, I mean, we've already seen a couple of coaches, an assistant coach from the Vikings. We saw here locally one of the assistant offensive line coach for the Patriots. Either, there's some discrepancies whether the coach voluntarily left or if they told the coach, you're either going to get the shot or you're leaving. So, I'm sure there's going to be different stories about what happened with each of those coaches, and I'm sure those stories are different. I'm sure there's other coaches that are in the same situation. On top of the fact that this is a public health crisis, look at what happened last year with all the different players that got COVID, and then it messed up the week or even the season. Look at the Patriots. Patriots are playing pretty well. Then Cam Newton goes out because he's got COVID, and then they're playing the Chiefs. They go to the Chiefs. They almost beat them even without Cam Newton, but then Brian Hoyer throws a terrible pick in the end zone. I don't want to get into that game right now, but, COVID kind of, even though the NFL was able to get through a season, they had a Super Bowl, everything went actually pretty well in the postseason. But it threw a monkey wrench into everything, So if you're a coach, just get the vaccine, and then you just don't have to even worry about it. Because one of the things too is that even if you get COVID when you have the vaccine in the NFL, I think you only have to sit out like a couple of days, and then they can test you again or something like that. Because I know Devin Asiasi of the Patriots just got it, but he's vaccinated, so I don't think he's going to be out a full week. I think it's only a couple of days.
2 negative tests.
2 negative tests, right? So you don't have to be up to 10 or 14 days that used to be the case when you weren't vaccinated. So just make it easy on yourself, make it easy on the team. And second of all, I'm sure you saw Ron Rivera coming out being like, I just had cancer, so why can't? And he's mad that his team has the lowest vaccination rate of any team in the NFL. The Washington football team has the lowest vaccination rate in the NFL, and their head coach just recovered from cancer. And he's like, listen, I'm compromised here, and I got the vaccine. Why can't you guys just do the same thing, and then we don't have to worry about anything? So it just seems so easy. It's the vaccines being distributed at a lot of these stadiums. Gillette Stadium here in Massachusetts has been one of the most successful vaccine sites in the state. So if you work at Gillette Stadium, just go downstairs and get the vaccine. It's so easy to do now. I don't see why you can't just get it done, especially when the rest of the team has done it. It's not a big conspiracy. I don't understand it. So there you have it.
I completely support this move by the NFL, man. Get vaccinated. Get yourself vaccinated. Let's get out of this pandemic and put this all behind us so we can really go back to normal. Because obviously with these variants popping up and possibly more variants popping up with people being unvaccinated, we're going to be in this and having to deal with this for much longer. So get vaccinated, people. We need to end this pandemic. And hey, man, Ron Rivera, by all accounts, is an amazing guy, an amazing coach, former coach of the year. Come on. If you're one of his players, once I heard that, I mean, I'm already vaccinated, but if I hadn't already heard that, I would have been in there if I was one of his players, because Ron Rivera is that great of a guy. I'd just be looking to support my coach and a friend at that point. But man, I'm all for it. Like I said, every time I've been seeing one of these coaches get dismissed, I'm like, you're really going to give up a great coaching job like that because you don't want to get a vaccine? Ah, man, that's ridiculous. And some people are saying, well, it doesn't have full FDA approval yet. Well, guess what? News on the headlines today is by early September, it is going to have full FDA approval. So what is your argument with that now? We're only a few weeks away from that. So you're just going to want to wait until the beginning of the season? Guess what? The NFL said no. You get it now or you get dismissed. And I love it. I personally love it. Another thing that they said this week was, if they have to forfeit a game, if a team has to forfeit a game because of high COVID tests and positive tests, that it will just be a flat out forfeit and there will be no game checks. And that hit right home for the players. The next week on all the teams were reporting vaccines were up 60%. That's because guys, and now you're talking about hitting their paycheck. And remember, on most of these NFL contracts, it's pretty much geared paycheck to paycheck, game to game. So in the offseason, you're not continuing to get these huge paychecks, okay? And that's been always one of the arguments that the NFL players have been trying to argue for. So game checks matter. Game checks matter big time. And so I think the NFL was sending a huge message there, message sent and message well received. Obviously, vaccines went up, but I'm just shocked that, like I said, some of these coaches being willing to give up these great, amazing jobs because you're unvaccinated. What do you think? You're going to go down and be a Division I coach? Guarantee you go try to go to one of those schools, they're going to want you to be vaccinated. I had just applied to a Division I school in this offseason locally in here in New England. I won't say which school, but they had said if you accept the job, you have to have full vaccination report. You have to show it. You have to show it. So it's like you're not getting away from that right now. You need to get vaccinated. It's for the better of everyone. It's for the good of the whole public, man. So I'm just really shocked that there's anybody really putting up with it. And like, is this Cole Beasley on the left? Because he's one of the anti-vaxxers, I guess, Cole Beasley. Really shocked to hear that you're kind of that dumb, Cole Beasley, because I really thought you were a smarter guy than that, man. You really show really good football smarts on the field, especially getting open out of the slot. But now you're really talking about jeopardizing everyone's health just so you can continue to live your normal life. I mean, we have normal laws against that right now. And Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, just brought it up. And I was glad to hear finally a huge public official bring it up, being like, you can't drink and drive. So, and that's for the better of the public health. So guess what? Getting the vaccine is too. I'm glad to see that the NFL is making this mandatory.
Yeah, I mean, there's other professions too where if you're, a Doctors Without Borders employee, or you're one of those medical people who go overseas to certain countries, you get vaccinated before you go there because of what you deal with in that foreign country. Where it's a third world country or the medicine just isn't as good over there, you get vaccinated here so that when you go there, you don't then bring it back when you come back to the United States. And it happens, in Great Britain, they do the same thing, and then they go to another country. So, and other countries that are a little more well off do the same thing with Doctors Without Borders and other medical professions. So the NFL is sort of taking that stance, like, listen, because of our profession, what we do especially, we need to mandate this vaccine and make sure that people are getting it. And, Coach Ron Rivera would get a cancer treatment last year and then show up and coach on the same day. So if he's going to do that for you, why can't you just go get the vaccine? It's that simple. So I'm sure this is going to be a revolving story throughout the year. And, it's not just a part of football. It's obviously a part of everybody's life, our full society right now. So we'll see how that, unfolds going forward. Moving on to topic number 3, we're going to stick with the NFL. Quarterbacks are camping. So we had really 2 of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. We weren't sure if they're going to show up for training camp. One was Aaron Rodgers. We've been hearing from him the last couple of months. And then the other one is Deshaun Watson, who wanted out of Houston. And then all those sexual assault allegations came out. He has 22 different sexual assault allegations against him. And then Rodgers, as we mentioned, had some issues with what the Packers were doing. Recently, they came up with some new stipulations in his contract, Brandon. So what do you think about these 2 guys showing up to training camp sort of unexpectedly this year?
Well, hey, first off, if you're new to our show here, give us a subscribe, give us a like, because chances are we're going to say something crazy on here that you might not like. I know some Dutch fans have been finding that out over the last few weeks. But hey, man, give us a subscribe, give us a like. We're going to keep delivering great content, especially the more subs we get. But yeah, I mean, this is a big topic. I just recently watched, Aaron Rodgers' main interview when he came out. So I want to say cheers to both these quarterbacks, Aaron Rodgers and Deshaun Watson, for backing their stances immediately when they came into camp, okay? So Aaron Rodgers, they obviously worked out this mini deal that everybody's saying is kind of a win for the Green Bay Packers. I guess it is because you're getting him to report to camp, but it's only a deal to the end of this season. And it pretty much sounds like at the end of this season, Aaron Rodgers is going to be a free agent, be able to go wherever he wants. So how is this a win for Green Bay? I don't believe it is, honestly. We've talked about Rodgers on this show many of times, how you need to be locking this guy up for at least the next 5 years. I mean, he was talking about he feels like he's got at least 7 more years in his career. And why doubt him at this point? Was just the NFL MVP last year. And he even just said, why would you want to be a lame duck quarterback coming off an NFL MVP season? This isn't his choice. He doesn't want to be having this, but he literally came out in his conference and said, it's what Green Bay, in his press conference, it's what Green Bay's done. He mentioned the draft a few times without saying Jordan Love's name, but he specifically mentioned draft day a couple of times. He also specifically said, I'd like to have more say in things that directly impact my job. And that's what we've been saying. He wants to have more say in the lineup, in the team, in the guys he plays with. And here's another thing that, man, if you're a veteran, you want to go play with Aaron Rodgers now. Hearing this, he was backing how the team disrespected some of the veterans and sent them packing, like a Jordy Nelson, like a Clay Matthews. He's like a Micah Hyde. He brought up, I believe, 10 different players saying that the Packers treated them wrong, lowballed them on contracts, or, just kind of sent them packing in free agency. And they were guys that they should have kept because they were great locker room guys. They were good players and they fit in the system. And he had no say over that, he said. So it was one of those things where, the number one guy on your team wants a say in what's happening right now. And I totally understand. I totally back Aaron Rodgers right now. Hey, man, come to New England, Aaron Rodgers, next year, and you can have the run of the mill over here and run the team, especially we got a lot of new weapons for you, because I honestly want to see who he's going to be playing for next season. Or is this obviously just a power play, and by the end of the year, they will lock him up to a 5-year deal or maybe even longer and give this guy more money and more security and more say in the roster? I've been saying this on the show. Go back, pull it up, all right? Go back and watch it. Give it a like, give it a subscribe. Give this guy what he wants. He's one of the best players in the league, arguably one of the best quarterbacks, I say, of the last couple of generations, right? And I got to give it to him, too. This is a guy that's always bet on himself. When he first came out and was drafted out of Cal, people were like, is this guy kind of worth it? He's going to sit behind Brett Favre for a couple of years. Boy, man, were all those people wrong questioning him, because, boy, was he worth it. He is one of the best quarterbacks, like I said, over the last few generations in the NFL. I still think he's got a lot left in the tank. A great leader. Is definitely somebody I would want leading my team. So I don't know. Green Bay is going to have to get their act together, but I really loved him coming out and backing his stance in this first press conference and just giving us some clarity of his stance right now in the situation. And then quickly before I turn it over to you, huge Deshaun Watson fan. I support Deshaun Watson 100%. Love that he came to camp and immediately reiterated, I want to be traded. I want off this organization and out of this team. Let's see how it can be made happen. And then quickly, guess what? That week, finally, news came out that the Houston Texans are now fielding calls and fielding trade offers for Deshaun Watson, which we've been saying for months is going to happen. Can't wait to see what his new team is and can't wait to see when it happens. Rumor has it it's going to take at least 3 first-round picks and maybe a few roster people to make it happen. But we're talking about a generational talent here with Deshaun Watson, a quarterback that is not only great in the pocket, but can get outside the pocket and get you first down, touchdowns with his legs, but also move the pocket, throw on the run, makes great decisions, great locker room guy, great organization guy. I mean, this is the quarterback that you really want on your team for the next 10 years. And arguably, he's so young, he might be able to play another 15 years. We're seeing how long quarterbacks are playing right now. So if I'm any team right now, I am quickly saying, hey, what do we got for draft picks? What can we gather up for talent? And what do we want to ship out contract-wise to try to make this happen to get Deshaun Watson?
Yeah, first I'll start with Deshaun Watson. One team I think could be a suitor for Watson is the Miami Dolphins. They just had Xavier Howard, one of their top cornerback, say he wants to be traded. You could trade Howard and 3 future first-round picks for Deshaun Watson. I think that might get it done, especially at this point. Miami might start with 2 future firsts, and then Houston will ask for more. The thing with Deshaun Watson is he lost leverage when all these sexual assault allegations came out, because now there's going to be some teams that don't want to trade for him because they don't know what's going to happen to him. Right now, there's no, because it's, investigations are pending and that sort of thing, there's no NFL, punishment that's been served out to Watson yet. And we'll see what happens with this whole thing. It might take the entire year to even kind of figure it out. It might take even longer than that. There's no denying his talent. I've always liked Watson on and off the field. This is the first time I can ever remember something like this ever being a part of Watson's off the field situation. But he lost a lot of leverage. So I think he kind of had to show up to camp. If you had a guy who, had all these sexual assault allegations, then didn't show up to camp at all, who's going to want to trade for him? Even though he's one of the I think he's a top 5 quarterback talent-wise, without question. But I don't know who would want to trade for him if you have the sexual assault situation and not showing up to camp. So for him to want to get traded, he had to show up to camp. So it made sense for him, smart by his agent, whoever's advising him, he had to show up. So, he's out there working with his Texans teammates who apparently doesn't want to play with. Tough for them, but that's a leverage move by him. So it's all about leverage.
Yep.
With Rodgers, like you mentioned, they restructured his contract, so he'll have more options at the end of the season. They just traded for Randall Cobb, which is what Rodgers wanted. I think Rodgers probably would want to upgrade some of the other positions, maybe an upgrade at tight end. I'm sure he wanted one of the guys that maybe the Pats picked up in the offseason. That probably would have helped. But it seems like they're working with Aaron Rodgers to try to figure this out. You mentioned, how is this a win for the Packers? I don't know if it's necessarily a win for the Packers, but it's better than what the alternative was, which was forcing a trade this offseason and not really having a backup plan. I know Jordan Love is, sort of the backup plan, but who the heck knows how he's going to be, in the NFL. And then, you have Devontae Adams coming out saying he wants to be traded from the Packers. So at least now you have another season. You can, run it back with Rodgers, with Adams. You have Randall Cobb coming back. And you still have a really good offense. You have a good defense. You have a team that was in the NFC Championship game last year. You can run it back at least one more year, see if you can win a Super Bowl, and then deal with it in the offseason. You also have a year now to prepare for the offseason so that you can kind of make your plans going forward, whether it's at the quarterback position or anywhere else. So I think that's sort of what the Packers' win was, you lose a year of Aaron Rodgers essentially, but you're at least, pushing it off for a year that you have to deal with getting rid of him or, planning for the future. So I think that was the most important thing that they were able to figure out throughout this whole thing with Rodgers. So, him showing up to camp, it's, I think, showing his teammates he's gonna ball out this year. He's gonna be with them this year. Like I mentioned, they just got Randall Cobb, Adams. so they're going to be good. But him showing up to camp on time, this was the first year he'd ever missed off-season workouts and the off-season, mini camp and involuntary workouts and things like that. He'd never done that before. So now him showing up to camp on time shows that this season he's going to be there for his teammates, and that's important.
Yeah, you bring up a great point with now Devontae Adams' contract and Aaron Rodgers are now tied together, right? Where they both have 1 year left. So it's really a situation where in Green Bay, you're going to figure out how to bring them both back together long term, or you're going to see them both walk away and it's going to be full rebuild time at that point. So it's going to be big questions going on for the next, whole year. We'll have to cover it even more on this show. And then quickly with Deshaun Watson, nothing has been proven yet. And that's why you said that there can't be any punishment even from the NFL because there's been no proof. You would think with such a high profile character that some of these things would have been proven and brought, forward even more and brought to the courts at this point. It just seems like it's fizzling and falling apart the more and longer it goes. So I don't know, but you do bring up a great point. Like you said, it does affect his trade value with certain teams. There's no doubt about that. Let's move on to topic number 4 tonight with Simone Biles bowing out of the Olympics. Man, really, what a disappointment. I know for all of our fans here in the United States and probably if you're a gymnastics fan worldwide to see Simone Biles have to bow out here. And she said it was for mental health issues. So what do you got on this, Pat?
Yeah, I mean, we've already been talking about the Olympics and how some of the stars, we mentioned Sha'Carri Richardson and her situation, and then, a couple of folks got COVID before they even went over there, including like Coco Gauff and a couple of the golfers had to leave, Bryson DeChambeau, John Rahm. And now you have probably the face of the United States Olympics group is Simone Biles. She's known for being an Olympian, and now she has to bow out. So as a U.S. Olympics fan and as someone who likes to watch the Olympics and even watch gymnastics, I never watch gymnastics unless it's the Olympics. It's disappointing, but hearing what it's about, I think is very important. We have to remember that she was one of the many gymnasts who was sexually assaulted by Larry Nessler, that dirtbag of a trainer from Michigan State who was helping out the Olympic team with the Carollis and everything like that. She was one of them that suffered through that. So when she goes back to the Olympics, I can't even imagine, anytime she steps on the mat in the gym, she's got to be thinking about that. So if it's mental health stuff, and she said it was, we all got to salute her for at least understanding that she couldn't go through this without having to take a break. And, maybe some people think she's quitting, or that's just stupid. But you just remember what she's been through, what all these other gymnasts have been through over the past couple decades after what that dirtbag did to all of them. That's what you got to have in the back of your mind anytime, especially when a gymnast comes out and says, I need to take a break. I got some mental health stuff going on. So, I'm disappointed to not see her at the Olympics anymore, but totally understand, or can at least sympathize with her, what she's going through. We all need to understand that is a huge part of these gymnasts' lives. And she's one of the older gymnasts now. Some of the younger ones didn't have to deal with that guy, so luckily for them. But herself and then gymnasts after her are older than her, like an Allie Raisman and even gymnasts older than Allie Raisman dealt with that guy. So, we're hoping that the generation of gymnasts after Simone Biles doesn't have to deal with this type of stuff, even though some of them will probably have mental health issues as well. But you got to keep in mind what they went through when something like this happens, where they have to bow out of the Olympics.
Yeah, no, you bring up a lot of great points. And honestly, I'm going to be like full 100% honest here. When I first saw this, I was critical of her. I'm not going to lie. I was so disappointed because it's like this would be like the equivalent of like on the Dream Team, Michael Jordan being like, you know what, I'm going to sit out. And that's literally the equivalent because she is literally arguably the greatest gymnast of all time. I think she is the greatest of gymnasts of all time when you match it up to what all the things she's done to everybody else. So I was critical, being like, well, there goes our chances of gold. And sure enough, the team tried to rebound. They tried to bring it together. They fought hard, but it was silver medals at that point, kind of guaranteed when your best all-around gymnast has to step out in the team competition. But then honestly, I took a step back and I looked at it myself, and I just started thinking about it. And I started thinking about, hey, we were supporting Naomi Osaka with her mental health issues, and Michael Phelps, and I saw Michael Phelps's interview, and he talked about, man, she's probably under a lot of stress right now, and Michael Phelps talked about the stress that he was having to deal with going into these future Olympics, already carrying all these gold medals around his neck. And so he said, we all handle stress differently, and this is the way she's handling it right now. And so when I saw that, it really made me step back and check myself and say, I think everybody, if you're being critical of her right now, you've got to step back and say, that's not the time for that. It's definitely not. It's the time to support her. She is one of our greatest gymnasts of all time. And like I said, man, another person that in these current games dealing with some mental health issues is Katie Ledecky. Honestly, she talked about the pressure going into the freestyle and then going into the 400 freestyle, the 2 in the 400. And, she in the 200, she got the silver medal and lost to the Australian young gun. And then in the 400, she was off the podium. Luckily, Ledecky rebounded and won the gold in the 1500. But I think, there you go. Look, think about it. Michael Phelps is arguably the greatest Olympian of all time, arguably. Katie Ledecky is close behind him. All right. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And it's so those are two of the greatest Olympians of all time talking about how they've had to deal with it. And it's definitely an issue at that level. So why can't it be for Simone Biles as well? So I think we all need to support her going forward. And luckily, this isn't potentially the end, because she still might compete on Sunday in the individual vault. So boy, would it be a great story for her to decide to come back and be a champion and show it on Sunday. But even if she doesn't, she's already, I believe, a champion enough for coming out and supporting these mental health issues and just saying, hey, we got to step back. And mental health is just as big as physical health and everything else. You need all of it together. And man, life is much important. We love sports here. Don't get us wrong. Sports is our lives, and that's why we're covering it. But life is much bigger than sports, and we like to just tie it all in together. So I don't know. We're definitely supporting her here, though, and supporting her going forward.
Yeah, and I think the other thing we got to remember, too, is that, if she's not 100% geared up for this, then she's taking the spot of somebody else who is. And she's been there so many times. And this isn't an everyone gets the trophy segment here, but if she's not 100% ready to go, why not let somebody else jump in there and give it their 100% shot? You know what I mean? If she's not fully engaged, especially mentally, and then that's also when athletes get hurt. When you're not thinking clearly, when you're not 100% there, that's when you're a little sluggish. And our producer put up some of those tweets, and I couldn't quite see who the gymnast was. I think it was Dominique Moceanu, who did a somersault on the balance beam and then smashed her head on the balance beam. These gymnasts are doing this stuff. I mean, in the Olympics, they're doing it at like 14, 15, which is crazy. Yeah. They're not even adults yet, but they start this stuff with, almost out of the womb, like when they're like 4 or 5 years old. So, never mind what happened with Larry Nessler, which is just this most massive thing ever, one of the biggest sports scandals ever. Think about the mental abuse that these girls deal with growing up as gymnasts and having to have a gymnast parent who's like on their case all the time about being a gymnast and all the hours and all that kind of stuff. And there has been discussions about how healthy it really is for these young girls to go through this gymnast thing, for such a long time. So you add all that stuff up. By the way, we're still in the middle of a pandemic, and they're going overseas to a country that's having a tough time dealing with the pandemic. Yeah, there's going to be mental health stuff going on, and we're seeing that with these athletes right now. So that's going to continue to be a story going forward. Brandon, let's get your last thought on this one.
One quickly, honestly, if we're really supporting this mental health thing, we got to show more support to Sha'Carri Richardson. She specifically said she used marijuana because of her mental health and to support, and she had just lost her paternal mother. and she was using it because of that. So I'm just saying, don't knock her. You got to be supporting all these people for mental health issues.
Sure. And yeah, I think, that's another conversation about her again that we've had in the past. So folks, if you want to hear about our opinion on Sha'Carri Richardson, go back a couple of weeks ago when that whole thing came down, when she got suspended because of the use of marijuana. Go to our Comeback Sports channel, hit subscribe, check out that video where we talked about Sha'Carri Richardson, because there's a lot of different factors. But as you mentioned, Brandon, mental health was a huge part of that as well. So that's a good point by you. We're going to move on to topic number 5, and that's LUKA leads Slovenia. So we're sticking with the Olympics. Luka Doncic, once again, going off for Team Slovenia. He had 48 points in his first ever Olympics contest. We mentioned how he had that huge championship game to get Slovenia into the Olympics. Comes back, first start in the Olympics. He had 48 points to lead Slovenia against, I believe it was Argentina, that they defeated 118 to 100. He had 31 points in the first half. I mean, this guy, Slovenia doesn't have a bunch of NBA players. The U.S. Olympic team lost to France, who has several NBA guys. They still shouldn't have lost to them. But the France team at least has a ton of NBA guys on the team. Slovenia doesn't. And Luka Doncic is just dragging them to wins right now with the way he's playing, Brandon. What do you think of this?
Man, Luka likey the Olympics. That's Luka likey everything. This guy's the man. We are big Luka Doncic fan on this show. We are big supporters here. This clip is going to blow up in Slovenia, just like our last clip did. Everybody in Slovenia and their grandmothers were watching our last clip on Luka, and they're going to be watching this one, and deservingly so. He's got to be the country's hero at this point, right? And I mean, he's their young hero too, their young superstar. We talked a lot about young superstars on this show, and here's just another one of them. We're going to talk about a few more coming up on this show later on. But Luka is the man, and he's just showing it on the Olympic stage. Quickly, I want to bring up, because this is almost a point for Luka, Damian Lillard's funny comment geared at, I'm drawing a blank, the guy's name that played for the Celtics there, for France there.
Gershon Yabusele?
No. We just
Evan Fournier.
Evan Fournier. That guy's that bad. I forgot his name. In my opinion, he was that big of a bust in that Celtics trade. Damian Lillard brings up a great quote in that loss, being like, some of these guys play totally different when they put on that Olympic uniform. And that was twofold. That was him saying, obviously, the Olympics means a lot to these guys, and you're playing for their country. But also, it was twofold. A shot at Evan Fournier, being like, I have never seen you play like that on an NBA stage. So that's kind of BS what you're bringing now. And I'm not, the United States lost. Go back. I said, if they lose one of their opening games, it's probably not going to be good for them. And that's what happened. But, hey, we're talking about Luka right now. Luka is the man, leading his team to a win against Argentina. Look at that pass, behind the back pass, pocket pass. This guy is the man. He can do it all. He's got the inside game, the outside game. He's a great leader. He can bring the ball up the court. I mean, he can score from outside. This is a great guy to have leading your team. Just drop 31 points in the first half. Argentina must have been like, man, what are we doing? Is Luis Scola still on that Argentina team? Scola must have been like, anybody stop this guy at this point? And I don't know. Luis, nobody can stop this guy at this point. And I'm glad Argentina had to play him and the U.S. didn't have to play him this early, because he is on fire right now. But dropping 48 points in the Olympics, to me, is like dropping 80 points in an NBA game, honestly, because we're talking the Olympic stage and all that pressure for your country too. And it's like for Luka, he's got ice water in his veins. Just another day for him on the basketball court. Man, I'm telling you, this guy, haven't seen the likes of him in a long time, with him being this good out of Europe. I don't know. I'm having a hard time. His former teammate, honestly, Dirk Nowitzki, is probably the closest guy, I think, coming out of Europe that you can compare to this guy being this good this early. But, man, I love Luka Doncic. I could watch the clips of him all day long. But yeah, man, we're going to be covering him all Olympics because we're huge Luka fans.
Yeah, I think his 48 points were the tied for the second highest total ever in a men's Olympic basketball game, or something to that effect. There was one player who I think scored 60 or maybe 61, and some folks thought that Luka was going to get there because he scored 31 in the first half. They won by 18, so they didn't have to play him the entire second half, like they might have had to with that player who scored 60. So he only played, he didn't play the full half as compared to some other players. But yeah, unbelievable. I mean, you see there are certain players who can take a below average team and elevate them to above average. And you're seeing Luka do that right now. I know it's not the NBA. I know it's the Olympics, but he's doing that with this team. You used to see Michael Jordan do that with teams all the time, even before he, got Scottie Pippen and Horace Grant and Dennis Rodman as teammates. He was elevating these Bulls teams and getting them to the playoffs when they had no reason to be there. So I'm not saying Luka's as good as Michael Jordan, but he's that type of player. That's why he's already probably a top 5 player in the NBA. If you're a Mavericks fan, you're hoping that playing with sort of an inferior team, but still using your entire team is something that Luka is continuing to learn in this international play so that he can carry it over to the NBA side, because the Mavericks really need him to be one of those kind of guys as far as not just scoring a ton, but also making things easier on his teammates for them to score as well. But yeah, he's been unbelievable. And I don't think this is a shocker to anybody if you've seen him in the NBA, but he just keeps continuing to hoist that bar and move that bar up and make it even higher on himself, never mind anybody else in the NBA, with the way he's playing right now.
Yeah, like you said, he just keeps setting the bar higher and higher every time he gets on the court. And I think he's just going to continue here in the Olympics and carry that over back into the NBA. And the thing we'll be covering next for him is his Supermax deal. I mean, he still hasn't come out yet, still hasn't signed that Supermax deal with Dallas. So we need to see that. Is he going to stay in Dallas? I believe he is. So we're going to have to see what the number hits for him. But, he might be that next guy that's worth $1 billion, honestly, as a professional athlete coming down the line if he's marketable right. And honestly, I think he is right now. But, yeah, we are huge Luka Doncic fans here, and he deserves it, man. He's the man. Luka likey the Olympics. But let's move on to, like I was just talking about, the $1 billion athlete, $1 billion Bron. Topic number 6, the first professional athlete to be valued at $1 billion or over in his career. And man, that's amazing. Like when you got the likes of Jordan and some other athletes, this is a heck of a title for King James.
Yeah, I believe he's the first athlete to be a billionaire while still active in his particular sport. I think that's the full detail there, because Jordan, like you mentioned, has been a billionaire for a while now. Tiger Woods, I believe, is a billionaire. Some of the soccer players, Messi, Cristiano Ronaldo, I think are billionaires. I'm not 100% sure. But because of, what they do is they take the salary and they take any kind of endorsements, because that's all related to your profession and your particular sport. So, and then the next closest player in the NBA to what LeBron's earnings are is Kevin Durant at $580 million. So he's pretty far off from LeBron at that point. Next up after Durant is Steph Curry, who's at $430 million. So, we're talking about, hundreds of millions of dollars to $1 billion. So good for these guys. We're all jealous, but we're not, they've earned it.
Subscribe.
So, yeah, exactly. Guys, we love you. Subscribe to our show. But yeah, we've kind of always known that LeBron, on top of being, I think, the second greatest player ever in the history of the NBA, is always built a good brand. He's building a brand to be this type of player, but also, celebrity and international icon across the country, across the globe. And that's what he's doing, and that's why he's gotten to this point. I heard Space Jam 2 is not very good, but he made a movie that's probably going to make a lot of money. So there you go. So good for him. It's not his fault that the movie's not good. So, he's been doing this for a long time. We've seen other players doing it too. But LeBron, as we said a lot on this show, he was kind of the first athlete where from middle school to early high school, all the way through, has been in the spotlight. He's always been in the spotlight for, 25 years probably. And he's just one of those guys that has been able to excel despite being under that microscope. And I don't know if there's ever been, we saw even Tiger Woods, who was naturally and the most talented golfer ever to hit the PGA Tour. He worked the hardest. He was probably the strongest, but it broke him at one point. The fame kind of broke him in a different way, but it kind of broke him a little bit. We haven't seen that from LeBron, and I think that's why he's at this point now, where his career, he's a billionaire. He's gonna be an NBA owner, when he retires. I just think that's definitely gonna happen. He's gonna kind of follow MJ, but also he's mentioned that he wants to do that once he retires. We don't know when that's gonna be. Probably at least not in the 3 or 4 years for LeBron. The guy's a machine, but it's not a shocker that he's a billionaire, and I think he's just been so successful on and off the court that this was bound to happen.
I agree, bound to happen with the way that he markets himself, and I believe his off-court career earnings are like 700 million, right? Something crazy like that. His on-court earnings are just in the 300 to 400 million. So it's off the court. This guy is marketing himself in the right way and just drawing a ton of attention like he always has. Like you said, since he was probably in middle school, he's been drawing the eyes and attention of everybody here in America and even worldwide, because basketball is growing so much. And that's why you're seeing a lot of these Olympic teams playing so well, because of the growth of basketball internationally. And you got guys like Michael Jordan and LeBron James and Kobe Bryant to thank for that. So it's like, yeah, I think he should be thanking those other two guys, honestly, for his money, because I think Kobe Bryant and Jordan helped him get to this point with all their fame and their building blocks that they set up for LeBron. But LeBron, I think, is the man. And honestly, I wish he was playing on this Olympic team right now, because I said it immediately after that loss to the France. Me and my brother were talking, and I was like, this team doesn't have a leader or a dog on it, like a Jordan, like a Magic Johnson or a Bird or a LeBron. They need that on this USA team, and they just don't have it. So I wish $1 billion Bron decided to get himself another gold medal, but he's chilling at home counting his $1 billion, and I get it. But it's one of those things where he's earned it at this point. And anybody that says he hasn't is just a fool and crazy, and it's one of those things where we talked about it on this show before. If you don't like how much these athletes are currently making, then you shut off the TV. You don't buy hats. You don't buy, tickets to the games, and you become a fan of F1 or motorsports or something else, because it's you're driving up the money, and LeBron's the guy that's going to take advantage of it. And I don't blame him. If I was in that position too, or a position like Steph Curry, I'd be trying to drive up my money and my value too. And we are on this show. Hit the subscribe button, man. We're trying to get to 1 million subs so we can have some LeBron type money. And we'll give you more content as well. But yeah, no, LeBron's earned it at this point. So it's like, yeah, $1 billion Bron is just a great title now to go with King James.
No question. Yeah. And I think if we go back to the players who, helped these players get to this kind of money and this kind of fame, Jordan was the one that really, elevated NBA basketball to this. He was the first icon, right? And that dream team really made it basketball what it is around the world, this massive global international game. But it was really Larry Bird and Magic Johnson, that rivalry, that West Coast, East Coast thing. They played each other in the national championship game in 1979. And it just, it started from there. The NBA was struggling in the 70s, and they had drug problems, and they had, their games were on tape delay. And then these two guys come into the league, Celtics, Lakers, already a rivalry, East Coast, West Coast. You got two guys that were awesome passers. As good as a shooter as Larry Bird was, he was an incredible passer. Magic was known for as one of the greatest passers ever, probably. So you see that these two guys, they grew the NBA and elevated the NBA, and then Jordan took what they elevated and then picked it up and went to the moon with it, obviously. So those are probably the three guys that got the game to this point. And then LeBron's kind of the next one to carry the torch, as a lot of folks have said. I think the biggest thing now is who is the next player to carry that torch. It could be the guy we were just talking about, Luka Doncic. It could be an international player as the next guy. But yeah, LeBron's been, that like I said, that torchbearer for so long now that you just thought he would get to this point. Dame Dollar, could be him, man. Could be him. He's certainly charismatic enough. Weirdly enough, though, he's in his early 30s. He's starting to get a little long in the tooth, but still love Dame Dollar.
I had to throw it out there.
You had to. Good call, man. We're going to move on to topic number 7. We're still going to stick with basketball and stick with the NBA. The NBA draft is tomorrow night, the 2021 NBA draft. A lot of good players in that draft. We're not going to do a mock draft or anything like that, but what we want to talk about tonight is we're each going to pick our biggest boom and our biggest bust. So we're going to pick our player that was either a steal or a player that not everybody thought was going to be this great player and turned out to be really good. And then we're going to pick our biggest bust, the player who, where there's a lot of hype surrounding this player and they just really struggled in the NBA or even to carve out space in the NBA. So, Brandon, I'll let you go first. Biggest boom and biggest bust for you in the NBA draft.
I'm going to go with my booms first. And some people are going to be like, oh, man, those are weak. But honestly, I'm going to have some facts to back it up, all right? So first off, for my booms, I want to go locally here. Chauncey Billups, okay? First round draft pick, 3rd pick overall. But I think that was one of those things. If the Boston Celtics had kept him, obviously you saw him to go on to Detroit to win titles on that team and be the leader of that team with Rip Hamilton. So it's just really one of those things where I think he turned into an amazing NBA player, one that the Boston Celtics should have never passed on so early after spending a high draft pick on him, drafting him 3rd overall, and he turned out to be a great player. But I'm going to go with some other guys, even bigger names, because here's the thing. I'm talking risk and reward, and we all know that that's what the draft is. It's all about risk and reward and what you can get for draft value. So I'm going to talk about Kobe Bryant and Kevin Garnett. When those two had to get drafted right out of high school, imagine being the NBA GM, being like, we're spending our number 1 draft pick on a high school kid. And I know they were proven and look like kind of like LeBron. Same thing, too. Same with LeBron. I think LeBron was even a little bit more established as a player, and there had been more eyes on him than Garnett and Kobe Bryant. So it was probably more of a sure pick when you're drafting LeBron out of high school. But when you're drafting Kobe Bryant and Kevin Garnett out of high school, if you get that wrong with the number 1 pick, you're setting your team back by 10 years at least, and you're also going to lose your job as the general manager. But guess what? Those guys were diamonds in the rough. Kobe Bryant becoming one of the greatest players of all time, if not the greatest player of all time, in my opinion, up there with Michael Jordan. And then you got Kevin Garnett, top 50 NBA player of all time, easily, probably top 25 in my opinion. So it's one of those guys, like I said, I just think that those are big time boom, but it was risk reward. They were high school kids. You really didn't know what you were going to get. And boy, did you get a lot. You got 2 of the greatest players of all time. Now I'm going to go on to busts because, man, those are more fun to talk about, especially as a coach or as an analysis guy. And so I honestly got to bring up Darko Milicic, 2003. I believe he was the 2nd draft pick overall. And, man, for the Detroit Pistons, and just turned out to be absolute dookie. Garbage, didn't ever really put in any really quality minutes for the Detroit Pistons, then moved on to be kind of an NBA journeyman for a few years before he was out of the NBA game. And honestly, there's a long backstory too. ESPN covered it on him too. So you can go and watch that. I'm sure you can pull that up on YouTube about what he's doing now back in his home country and how that time in the NBA affected him personally and affected his life going forward. But man, I'm sorry, Darko, but you were a big time bust. One of the biggest NBA busts of all time. Okay. And then now I'm going to move on quickly, which might not be a huge bust, but the 1984 draft, okay? Michael Jordan going 3rd overall, okay? Sam Bowie being drafted 2nd overall by the Portland Trail Blazers. That has got to be one of the biggest NBA draft busts of all time, passing up on Michael Jordan. And people were like, hey, who was number 1 that year? Hakeem Olajuwon was number 1 that year, one of the greatest players of all time. I'd say was a little bit more established than Michael Jordan at the time. So he deservedly went first overall, but Jordan should have been a lock number 2 to the Portland Trailblazers. Instead, they pick Sam Bowie, who goes on to do nothing really in his NBA career, be another NBA journeyman. And then Chicago Bulls draft Michael Jordan out of the University of North Carolina, number 3 overall, and the story's written after that. So I think that's another big bust. And then quickly, before I turn it on, anytime we're talking about busts and drafts, doesn't matter what sport you are talking about, you got to bring up Ryan Leaf.
Yeah, I know. Ryan Leaf is that's a complicated one. He ended up having some addiction issues too, but you're absolutely right. That's a huge bust, especially in the NFL. I'll start with my boom, and it's a little different. That I took a little different approach than you did. Look at Draymond Green. Okay, Draymond Green was picked 35th in the 2012 NBA draft. Okay, yeah. This guy was taken in the 2nd round. Okay, and Draymond annoys me sometimes. I'm not like a biggest Draymond fan, but Draymond was taken in the 2nd round of the NBA draft. Okay, even though he was the Big Ten Player of the Year, was really good for Michigan State. Yep. I believe he was the defensive player of the, or in the NBA, he became the defensive player of the year. He's got 3 championship rings. He's been on 3 All-Star teams, and he lasted till the 2nd round. I mean, in that draft, he did have Anthony Davis, Bradley Beal. We mentioned Dame Dolla. He was in that draft. Even Andre Drummond. They were all top 10 picks, and they've worked out in the NBA. But Draymond Green lasted all the way to the 2nd round just because he was kind of a big man, but he was only 6'6", and he was a little chunky, and they didn't really know where to fit him. The guy was just a really good basketball player, and the guy could, he had good soft touch, soft hands around the rim. He learned how to shoot threes once he got to the NBA, learned how to be a great defender, even on the perimeter in the NBA. So he's one of my biggest booms just for this particular segment because he dropped all the way to the 2nd round and still became a great NBA player. As far as the bust is concerned, I'm going to go off the grid a little bit. Everybody thinks about Greg Oden, Kwame Brown. Kwame Brown actually had a long NBA career. He just was not really a 1st overall pick worthy player. And then a guy who I don't even know what he's doing right now, Anthony Bennett, who was a 1st overall pick by the Cleveland Cavs a few years ago, right before Victor Oladipo was a 2nd overall pick. But the guy I'm going to go with is Dragan Bender. Back in 2016. Wow. Back in 2016, and this hits home a little bit with Celtics fans. The Celtics had the 3rd pick in the draft. Ben Simmons went 1, Brandon Ingram went 2, and the Celtics had the 3rd pick in the draft. There were some folks that thought that Celtics should take Chris Dunn, the point guard out of Providence College at the time, who's kind of bounced around the NBA, hasn't really worked out, or Dragan Bender, who was the 7-foot, 225-pound, I can't remember what country he's from, so my apologies to Dragan and his home country, but he was a big guy, big, tall center who could shoot, and everybody was like, the Celtics should take him there, at 3. The Celtics ended up taking Jaylen Brown, who has become an all-star in the NBA, one of the top players on the Celtics, and is forming a good tandem with him and Jason Tatum. Okay, so then Bender goes 4th overall to the Phoenix Suns, and I think his career average is like 4 or 5 points a game. I'm not sure how many minutes. He didn't play in the NBA this past season. He actually played back in his home country. I think he's from Croatia, if I have this correct. I might be wrong there, but he didn't even play in the NBA this season. He actually got traded to he got a 10-day contract that he signed with the Golden State Warriors back in 2020, was actually playing decent, and then the pandemic hit and went to the bubble, and he didn't end up going, and that was kind of it for him, the NBA so far. We'll see if he makes a comeback. But Dragan Bender has been one of those guys that just 4th overall pick and still, there's guys that have been busts and haven't played well but have lasted in the NBA. Dragan Bender is not there anymore. It's been only 4 years, so he's my bust for this particular segment.
No, you've got great calls there. And I've got to say, I'm jealous if they got any guaranteed money for doing nothing. But let's move on to
I'm sure
topic
that
number. Yeah, exactly. Let's move on to topic number 8. Amazing topic. One topic that I would love to cover and I wanted to cover, so I made it a topic on this show. And that's our F1 spotlight this week, which is on the driver Charles Leclerc, the young superstar out of Monaco. I personally love him, one of my favorite drivers on the grid. So I wanted to give him some extra love and give him some extra coverage.
Yeah, no question. So, the F1 is seeing a lot of young, good drivers right now. And Charles Leclerc is one of those guys. We've been talking a lot about Verstappen. He's 23 years old. Leclerc is 23. Leclerc made his debut back in 2018. That was with Sabre, I believe. It wasn't with Ferrari. Sauber, excuse me. And then 2019 is when Ferrari, elevated him to where he is now. He actually had a couple of nice wins in his first season with Ferrari back in 2019. This year, he's only hit the podium once. He just finished second at Silverstone, but he's had a nice season. I think he's 6th in points this year. He's got about 80 points just in front of his teammate, and he's had a good year despite not getting to the podium more than once. So he's one of these young guys who is going to be a superstar in F1 for years to come. It's been a few years now where Ferrari hasn't been one of those top teams in F1. We always think of Ferrari as this, ferocious car, the red car that's always cool. Ferrari's that Italian sports car, brand, and everybody always associates Ferrari with winning on F1, and it's been a few years now where they've been one of the top couple of teams. They're certainly trailing Mercedes and Red Bull. So, and if they don't look out, some of the other, McLaren and some of the other teams might leapfrog them as well. But I think Leclerc really helps them kind of lock a good position down in F1 right now. But I mentioned, all the young guys in F1, Lando Norris. I mentioned Verstappen, Carlos Sainz, who's now 26. So you've got guys 26 and younger, a bunch of guys that age that are really the stars of F1. Lewis Hamilton is obviously in his 30s. You got a couple other guys, in their 30s that are, starting to sort of fade out. Not that Lewis Hamilton is, but you've got all these young drivers in F1 that are going to carry the sport for a long time. And Charles Leclerc is one of those drivers.
Yeah, I think Charles is really one of the best drivers on the grid. If you really give him a car to compete up there in the front, he will make it happen. I think specifically this year, he has been driving the wheels off of this Ferrari, which, like you said, it's a historically great team. But right now, they're probably honestly a midfield team, and it's a midfield car. And he's been bringing it to the front, just got it on the podium at Silverstone after leading 50 laps. Arguably had a chance to win. And so it's just really one of those things where I think he is out driving the car, certainly out driving his teammate and Carlos Sainz, which we were just showing a lot of coverage of Carlos Sainz there with that Ferrari coverage. I guess Ferrari loves Carlos Sainz, and I would too. You got two great young drivers paired up right now out of Ferrari. The Tifosi must love it right now because Charles Leclerc, I think, is personally one of the best drivers on the grid. I think, honestly, he's up there with Lewis Hamilton, with Max Verstappen. If you give him a car that can compete with them, I think you'd be seeing 3 cars battling it up there, honestly. And like we just said, he was sitting behind that incident at Silverstone and was quick to pounce and take advantage of the contact there and go to the lead and then put himself in position to be able to win and then get second overall in the race and get himself his first podium of the year. But like you said, go back to his first year in Ferrari. He got himself several wins and was up on the podium multiple times. And hey, people want to say, obviously, Ferrari had that potential illegal engine that year, but I don't care. Charles Leclerc still had to drive it up there, had himself a great year that year, getting on the podium and getting several wins. And then now, hey, with that engine toned back and regulated, guess what, people? He's still driving his car up to the front and consistently scoring points and having a chance to be able to win. Arguably right now, I would say he is the best of the rest, but you got Lando Norris up there right now being the only driver that has scored in every race this season for McLaren, and he's got that McLaren team up there, and he's ahead of Charles Leclerc right now. So it's really those two are going to be battling it out to see who is going to be the best of the rest, besides obviously a Red Bull driver or a Mercedes driver, who are the two best cars on the grid right now. But yeah, Charles Leclerc is the man right now. Like you said, a young superstar, still got a lot to do in F1. And I'm telling you, they love this guy. We've talked about people with movie star looks. Charles is just another one of those guys, has got the movie star looks. He's got the longest job security in F1 right now because he's locked up with his contract until 2025. Everybody else is going to be looking for a new contract come a year or two from now. And Charles is going to be still at Ferrari and still helping drive this team back to championship dominance, which we all expect the prancing horse to be. So, I love Charles Leclerc, and I know a lot of other people do. So we wanted to just give him a lot of other coverage because I think he's been undercovered this year. Nobody's been giving him enough credit for what he is getting done with this car right now. And like we always say in F1, if you're not going to compare them to, like the top cars and everybody else, and Max and Lewis, will compare him to his teammate. And we always do that. You always get compared to your teammate. Number one, compared to Carlos Sainz, he is driving the wheels off this car right now and consistently putting himself in front of Carlos Sainz and having a chance to challenge the likes of Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton up front at these Grand Prix. So I love Charles Leclerc. I really hope when we get the new regulations that Ferrari is driving hard to be able to give Charles Leclerc a chance to have a championship car.
Yeah, no question. And you go back to 2019 and the two victories that he had. One of them was the Italian Grand Prix. So you think Ferrari gave a crap about what the engine was when he won the Italian Grand Prix for Ferrari? I don't think so. So, this guy is one of the superstars of the future in F1. And like you mentioned, his contract, the last year of his contract is 2024, I think, and then he might leave in 2025. So, but we'll see where Ferrari is at that point. So, he's going to be a guy that's going to be in the spotlight for a long time, along with Verstappen. And it could be, whenever Lewis Hamilton decides to leave the sport, it could be Leclerc and Verstappen going at it. They're the same age. Yep. They've been very successful already. So we'll see if it's those two guys going neck and neck for that top spot throughout the season once Lewis Hamilton decides to hang it up. So that's going to be a lot of fun to watch. Moving on to topic number 9, we're sticking with F1 racing because this story just does not want to go away. We talked a lot last week about the racing incident that happened with Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen at Silverstone. Now Red Bull wasn't happy that it was only a 10-second penalty for Lewis Hamilton, so they are filing an official petition to increase the 10-second penalty on Hamilton and Mercedes. Brandon, what are your thoughts on this petition filing of Red Bull?
Well, first I want to say, hey, if you're new to this show, give us a subscribe. Give us a like so we can keep delivering you great F1 content here from America. But, hey, I've got a lot to say, and obviously our viral clip of the incident went huge, and, the Dutch fans coming out, but it looked like the Lewis Hamilton fans coming out, too, to support it. So it's just really everybody's got an opinion on that incident. But quickly, I want to challenge these Max fans that are calling me biased. That is BS and bogus. Just because I said I was a Lewis Hamilton fan, well, guess what? I'm also a Kimi Räikkönen fan, a Daniel Ricciardo fan, a Charles Leclerc fan, a Lando Norris fan, and a George Russell fan. I'm pretty much a fan of half the grid. I just love Formula One, man. So trying to call me biased is just far from the fact. And guess what? I've been watching Formula One since I was a kid here in the States, going back to the years of Nigel Mansell, Damon Hill, Senna, and Michael Schumacher. The real reason I fell in love with Formula One was Michael Schumacher driving that red Ferrari to the podium year after year. So trying to call me an F1 biased fan is just a weak attempt at really, deflating and going against the facts here of that crash and that incident, because it just seems like Max fans and Red Bull clearly just don't want to drop it and move on, or even see that it was just a racing incident and it's just time to move on and move on to Hungary. But Red Bull bringing up the protest is not shocking to me at all. Let's go back to the teams in Austria when Valtteri Bottas spun in the pits. Teams quickly jumping on the horns to protest and wanting him to get a grid penalty, which quickly he did get a grid penalty. So F1 is just quickly becoming this thing of, hey, let's try to rat out the other team and snitch on the other team so we can give them a grid penalty and so we can get ahead of them and won't have to race them at the start of the race or even at any point in time during the race. And it's kind of sad to see at some point, you know what I mean? Because it's like, we've got to kind of get away from some of this back and forth and just get back to just pure racing at some point. But I think this is one of those things where kind of like team orders in F1, as a fan, we don't always like seeing it, but we know inevitably it's going to happen. There's going to be team orders during a race, and there's going to be teams protesting against other teams, whether it be teams protesting against Racing Point last year for potentially copying their car and being like Mercedes, or earlier this year. Like I said, I mainly think this is just Red Bull responding to earlier this year, Mercedes protesting on their car, which turned out to be a big issue going forward. So it's just really one of those things where, I don't know, can you still hear me?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Cause my PC was saying that I might've lost my mic. All right. But it's just really one of those things where I think you see this happen a lot, sadly, in F1, teams trying to basically challenge each other through the stewards to just get some advantage. And it's just even more competition in F1. But with Red Bull, I mean, it's just one of those things where a 10-second penalty was served for a 50-50 racing incident that a lot of people think was no penalty should have been served. 10-second penalty was served. He still went on to win the race. I think going back to look at it now is just wasting all of our time. I think it's time to move on to Hungary. And I know Red Bull's like, well, hey, we want to look at it going forward. So there's harsher penalties for that. But we've talked about this on this show. If you're going to be giving out harsher penalties for potential racing incidents, then guess what? You're going to start losing a lot of fans because the pure racing is just going to go right out the window. We want to be able to race tight, wheel to wheel, and we want to be able to race hard. And I guarantee you at Hungary this week, you're not going to be seeing anybody give each other room at all. And it's going to be an exciting race at Hungary, and I'm looking forward to it. But I think this Red Bull protest is going to go quickly out the window, and it's just kind of a waste of time for all of us F1 fans, to be honest.
Yeah, I think this whole thing with Red Bull bringing up this petition and trying to increase the penalty is strategy. It's strategy because they're so close in the standings right now, Hamilton and Max Verstappen, that anything that Red Bull can do to try to rattle Mercedes or try to rattle Lewis Hamilton, they're going to do, because Hamilton's now nipping at their heels again. We saw earlier in the season that Verstappen was kind of breaking away, but then Hamilton comes back last week at Silverstone, takes the first place podium, and all of a sudden he's right back in the thick of things with Max Verstappen. So anything that Red Bull can do to kind of distract Mercedes, they're going to do. Now, you look at what they have to do now to actually, for any type of penalty to incur, for them to increase the penalty, what's going to happen is there's a video conference between the two team managers, and I think there can be up to 2 more team representatives, and the team that's filing the petition has to bring new, important evidence to support their claim that it should have been a bigger penalty. So there's nothing that's come out that said that there was any more video evidence or any more, evidence from anybody else that was driving that day or any other team that would say that, that it was Hamilton's fault solely over Verstappen. You even mentioned last week how Verstappen's wheels were turned a certain way that might even say that it might have been a little bit of his fault too. So, I think this is strategy by Red Bull just to kind of, jack up the system a little bit and get Mercedes a little bit flustered going into the Hungarian Grand Prix, because they're going to have this video conference on Thursday. That's when everybody gets there in Hungary. So it's going to kind of kick the week off on a sour note for Mercedes. Even if they don't incur a penalty, it's still going to kind of put a bad taste in their mouth that could help them, or that could motivate them, or that could hurt them and distract them. So I think for Red Bull, this is strategy. Christian Horner is trying to kind of rattle Mercedes.
quickly, Pat, I lost your audio, so if you can still hear me, that's awesome. And I skipped out on my lip reading class at university, so we're gonna quickly still be able to finish the show though, and I'm gonna be looking back to hear what you said there because I'm sure it was amazing, analyst of that. And Christian Horner is not gonna be happy with producer Ben Kudo pulling up that picture with him with the wig on. Thought that was absolutely amazing. But yeah, hey, Red Bull fans, give us a subscribe here, give us a like. But let's quickly move on to topic number 10, and that's the Cleveland Guardians changing their name. The Major League Baseball team finally coming out with their new name, and it's the Cleveland Guardians. And I think a lot of people have an opinion on this name. But what do you got on this, Pat?
Yeah, I understand what Cleveland's trying to do. They changed the logo a few years ago from the face of an Indian to just the C for Cleveland, which I think was a good move to start off. And now they're just completely changing the name altogether. I think they're seeing what's happening with the Washington football team, and they don't want to go down that path to where they have to do the same thing that the Washington football team is doing. So they're already kind of jumping ahead of it, changing the nickname of the team. I don't know where they're getting Guardian from. I don't know where Guardian fits in with Cleveland. I don't know what, anytime I think of Guardian, I think of that movie The Guardian where, it's like Kevin Costner and he's like a Coast Guard instructor or whatever. That's all I can think of when I hear Guardian. So I'm not really sure how Guardian's going to look as far as the logo and as far as their gear and their uniforms and things like that. But I do understand why Cleveland is making this change. I think a lot of teams are going away from, obviously indigenous people title names and things like that. So I think it makes total sense. They're kind of just getting ahead of it as compared to what the Washington football team has been dealing with the last couple of years. So, I'm not sure where Guardian comes from, but I understand why they did it.
I think it's really one of those things where I think it was time. It was definitely time for them to change the name. And I think the city knew it, the team knew it, the organization knew it. And I give them credit, honestly, for being faster to change it than the Washington football team and actually coming out with a team name and, a team brand that they can go with forward and promote. The Guardians, it might not be the coolest name, but it does have some history, they said. And it goes back to, on their bridges in that city, there's some Guardian-like figures on their main bridges that connect their city there. And so I think it's huge that they connected it to their city, the team name. But I'm not going to lie. I thought there should be a cooler name than the Guardians there. But I think it's great that they, like I said, are naming it and taking the step forward to be able to literally get rid of a name with a racist undertone. And I think a lot of teams are looking to do that now. And I think it's appropriate now in this day and era that we kind of clean it up, especially in professional sports. And I think we even need to look at high school and college sport mascots as well and start to clean all those up as well. And it's not being, like cancel culture or PC. It's about having respect for people and humanity and mankind. And we're all in this together. So why should we be like downing each other with names like that, especially when it comes to race, a race, creed, or religion or sexual orientation or anything like that. So I think this is great that they decided to change the name. But, quickly, if you pulled it up, one of the things I pulled up, I want producer Ben to pull it up. If producer Ben still got my audio, is one of the team names. They must be in the farm league. The Burlington Sock Puppets pulled it up, and they tweeted out the Guardians' name. And they said, this was the tweet. I was laughing so hard, Pat. It said, what a silly name. And obviously coming from them, man, they played it so well right there. The tweet went viral. And I honestly want to buy myself a Burlington sock puppet hat or jersey or something because their mascot is amazing. It is literally a sock puppet with a baseball hat on and sunglasses. Producer Ben, pull it up quickly as you can because it is amazing. The Burlington Sock Puppets. And I honestly think if they're literally trying to promote their team like that great, I think between the three of us, we need to try to get somebody from the Burlington Sock Puppets live on this show coming up soon.
Oh, no question. I mean, if that's what they did to promote their team, that was brilliant because they don't care if they are insulting anybody or insulting the Cleveland now Guardians. You know, they just want promotion. So that's a great job by the Burlington sock puppets to use Twitter to their advantage to see if they can get some more promotion. There you see the sock puppets right there. Oh my God, that's great. He looks like the dog on the slushy cups from years ago, man. That's hilarious. Good stuff right there. The Burlington sock puppets. Just brilliant. I love it. It's brilliant. What a way to end the show, is to talk about the Burlington sock puppets. I love minor league baseball. They have to get creative at places like that. So that's unbelievable. Folks, that's going to do it for our show today. Once again, make sure you jump on YouTube, especially if you're watching us on YouTube. Subscribe to our channel, Come Back Sports. You subscribe to that channel. You make sure that if you're subscribing, you can just jump right there as soon as you jump on YouTube. You don't got to go search for us. You can just go right to the subscription. All the videos that our great producer Ben Kudo cuts up are going to be fed right to your channel because you are a subscriber. We want to thank all of our subscribers who are there now. The subscriptions keep growing, which is awesome. You guys are really helping us out. We hope we're giving you the best content possible. Again, if you're watching our show live, or if you just want to leave a voicemail and you want us to play it back on the show, call into that number right there at the bottom of the screen. That phone number right there. You can leave a voicemail. You can call into the show, and you can give your opinion about anything. You can ask a question, whatever you want to do. You can do that. Also, follow us on Twitter. On our Twitter handles right there. That's mine and Brandon's Twitter handle at the bottom of the screen. Tweet at us a question. Let us know what you think about the show. We can certainly use the feedback, and you can ask us a question there as well. Brandon, any final thoughts before we sign off? That's it, buddy. Okay. Thank you so much, folks.
Well,
for
I lost
joining
my
us.
audio.
Appreciate it. No worries,
if
man.
you were
We had
looking for a
great stuff.
send-off from me, I've got no audio from Pat. I had to just fly on these last two segments. I was flying on the lip reading on that. So my send-off is I'll see you next week. And, hey, F1 fans, we'll see you at Hungary.
Awesome. Yeah, if you didn't say anything, nobody would have even known. So you did a great job, man. We'll see you next time on Comeback Sports, folks. Have a good week.